When I designed this building, my mission was to make a nice house, but also design it in a way that's optimized for resin printing. I see so many buildings available online, and it's obvious that they won't print without some parts warping or failing completely, no matter how hard you try to add supports. So in this video, I want to briefly show you what goes into designing a building like this, how to print, post-process, paint and assemble it. The last few months I've been a complete nerd about designing HO scale buildings in Blender for resin printing. And that's also my mission for the rest of 2025. I want to design a few very nice houses and make them available for purchase online. So for designing I use Blender. It's quite hard to learn, but when you really commit to learning it, the sky's the limit. Reference photos play a crucial role when trying to create anything realistic. I use my phone as a second screen for the reference photos. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when starting projects like this, and everyone has their own things they struggle with. I just tell myself to keep it simple and spend more time on creating than consuming. I've spent about 9 days on modeling and test printing for this house and 3 days for painting. To be honest, I really enjoy making these things in Blender. In a dark room with some music, I can vibe out for hours and have a great time. When it came to adding supports, I tried to add them in the slicer, but it was not working at all. They just don't give you enough controls to customize them and get the best results. So I decided to make them in Blender. And compared to the supports from the slicer, it was a night and day difference. I found a tip diameter of 0.6mm to be perfect. This is all of the parts of the house and how I've supported them. The printer I'm using is a Creality Halot One and the resin is Creality Standard Fast Resin. I just quickly want to mention, if you are interested in printing this house, it's available on CG Trader and Buy Me a Coffee, but if you want to support me, please do so on Buy Me a Coffee, because unlike CG Trader, they don't take a big cut out of the sale. I also made it cheaper on Buy Me a Coffee. Here you can see how easy it is to remove the supports from the part. At this moment I had such a big smile on my face from the satisfaction. I'm gonna assume you already know all the steps to post-processing resin prints. If you don't, in short, you remove the parts from the build plate, and to remove the uncured resin you give them a quick bath in IPA, and then place them under a UV light to make sure it's cured properly. I have found it's the easiest to remove the print supports before washing and post-curing them. That way you also don't have to wash the supports, which means you can use the IPA for longer before it starts to get too dirty to use. I use a throwaway container with 2 slits in it to hold the flat parts so they can get even UV exposure to avoid warping. I cure all the parts for 15 minutes. At this point you might be thinking, why not print the floors and walls laying flat on the print bed? It's gonna take so much less time, but if you print it flat it's gonna warp. And that's because printers cure the first layer or the first few layers much longer to ensure good bed adhesion, and the resin actually shrinks a small amount when it cures. So when you post-cure the part, one side is already fully cured from the initial exposure layers and the other isn't, so it's gonna warp to one side. Some models want you to print them laying flat, but then you have to deal with the warping. And in my opinion the detail doesn't come out as nice when you print it flat. But yes, it will print in a fraction of the time. Anyway, with all of the parts printed, it's time to get ready for painting. But first, the parts printed directly on the print bed will have a small burr that's created from the initial exposure layers, which overcured the resin a bit. This needs to be removed using a file or some sanding paper. Also sand the areas where the supports were connected. Then I glue the two roof pieces together, at first using a small drop of super glue in each corner and lining them up perfectly, and then adding more glue to glue them in place permanently. Also glue the stairs to the interior wall. Also glue the second story interior wall to the second floor. Next I glue the two wall pieces together. If you don't mind painting in small areas, you can also glue the roof window to the roof at the stage, otherwise you can paint it first and then glue it in. I then take it outside and using Tamiya Surface Primer Fine Grey, I prime all the parts on the in and outside. If you don't prime the model on the in and outside before painting, it can cause some warping when painting the outside of the model using normal paint. So just to be safe, I recommend primer, and Tamiya Surface Primer work great. After the primer dried, I painted the windows using Tamiya Pure White. You can paint the building any colors you want. I used Umbro enamel paints. I looked at some reference photos and decided to paint the walls using matte 44. It's a quite grey blue type of color, I don't know what to call it. This is quite easy and not that time consuming. Painting using a brush works great, but you can also airbrush it if you want. Another advantage of painting the model in separate parts is it's much faster. If it was one part, you would have to wait for the paint to dry before painting another part of the model if you don't want to risk smudging the other paint. But when it's printed in separate parts, you can paint the walls, for example, and while the walls are drying you can paint the roof tiles. And while the roof is drying you can paint the windows, staircase, railing and other stuff. For the roof tiles I used matte 96. Next I use a clear sheet of plastic, which I cut into small rectangles, which fits on the inside of the windows. I then apply a small amount of super glue using a toothpick, and then carefully press the clear plastic into position, being as careful as possible not to get super glue in the area which will be visible. Adding the window glazing isn't necessary, but it's nice to be able to see the reflection of light in it. If you really want, you can add some curtains on the inside behind the glass printed on paper. With the windows and doors ready, I don't glue them in just yet, because I first applied a very thin dark brown oil wash. It adds a bit more contrast to the model and it helps the colors fit together. It also makes the model look less clean, which makes it look more realistic. And it just looks better in my opinion. While waiting for the wash to dry, I decided to paint the door frames white. It just looked a bit better along with the white window frames. I then use a big flat brush to apply some subtle dry brushing using a white oil paint. It's very easy to overdo this, so make sure you do some testing before attempting this. But I like how it adds a bit of highlight and makes the model look more realistic. I like using oil paints for dry brushing because it doesn't dry on the brush nearly as quick as other paints, but it also takes longer to dry on the model. It stops being sticky about 2 to 3 days later. Anyway, with all of that done, it's finally time for the most satisfying part in my opinion, which is gluing in the windows and doors. To do this, I apply a small drop of super glue and simply drop the window in place, like this. Adding furniture is definitely a possibility with this house, but I have some other buildings I also want to make and I already spent about 15 days on this one. Maybe in the future I will attempt to add furniture. But yeah, this house is finished. If you are interested in printing and building this house, it's available on CG Trader and my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'm gonna make it cheaper on Buy Me a Coffee because they don't take like a 60% cut of the sale, which is absurd. If you end up building the house, please leave a comment letting me know how you find the building experience and what I could improve. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.